We often hear about 411 missing person cases. But what if the person disappears and then shows up years later? Stephen Kubacki vanished without a trace in 1978. No signs of struggle. No clues. Just a pair of skis and poles left behind on the frozen shore of Lake Michigan. For 15 months, he was gone, presumed dead. Then, one spring morning, he woke up in a field over 700 miles away, with no memory of where he'd been or how he got there. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Stephen Kubacki. It was February 1978, and the icy grip of winter had settled over the Great Lakes. The town of Saugatuck, Michigan, lay quiet under a blanket of snow. The lake was frozen, the wind sharp, and the landscape unforgiving. Stephen Kubacki, a 23-year-old student at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, set out on a solo cross-country skiing trip along the lake's edge. He was athletic, intelligent, and fluent in multiple languages. A German major with a curious mind and a love for adventure. But something happened that day. Something that would defy logic and leave investigators, family, and friends grasping for answers. Stephen didn't return. The first sign of trouble came when snowmobilers discovered a set of ski tracks leading to the edge of the lake. The tracks stopped abruptly. There were no footprints leading away. No signs of a struggle. Just his skis and poles lying on the ice. It was as if he had stepped off the face of the earth. Authorities launched a search immediately. Helicopters scanned the frozen lake. Divers plunged into the icy waters. Rescue teams combed the shoreline. But there was no trace of Stephen. No body, no clues. Just the chilling silence of winter and the growing fear that something inexplicable had occurred. The official theory was simple. Stephen had fallen through the ice and drowned. It was plausible. The lake was dangerous in winter, and accidents happened. But there was one problem: no hole in the ice. No cracks. No evidence that the surface had given way. And Stephen was experienced. He knew the risks. He wouldn't have ventured onto unsafe ice. Weeks turned into months. The search was called off. Stephen was declared missing, presumed dead. His family mourned. His friends were left with questions that had no answers. And the world moved on. Until one day, everything changed. On May 5, 1979, 15 months after his disappearance, Stephen Kubacki woke up in a grassy field in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. He was over 700 miles from where he had vanished. He was wearing clothes that weren't his. He had a small satchel filled with maps and hitchhiking signs. He had no memory of the past year and a half. The last thing he remembered was skiing near Lake Michigan. He walked to his aunt's house nearby. She was stunned. His family was stunned. The world was stunned. Stephen was alive, but the mystery had only deepened. Doctors examined him. He was physically healthy. No signs of trauma. No evidence of injury. But his memory was gone. He couldn't explain where he had been, how he had survived, or why he had ended up in Massachusetts. He said he felt like he had just woken up, like he had been asleep for months. The media swarmed. Reporters wanted answers. Was it amnesia? A fugue state? Had he been kidnapped? Had he run away? Stephen didn't know, and he didn't want to talk about it. He returned to college, finished his degree, and later earned a master's in linguistics. He built a life. But he never publicly spoke about what happened during those missing 15 months. He refused interviews. He declined to write a book. He wanted privacy. And so, the mystery remained. There are theories, of course. Some believe Stephen suffered from dissociative fuga, rare psychological condition where a person loses access to their identity and memories, often traveling far from home. It's a plausible explanation. But it doesn't account for the strange details. The maps, the hitchhiking signs, the clothes that weren't his. Others suggest he may have been abducted, perhaps by a cult or secretive group. But there's no evidence. Then there are the more fringe ideas. That Stephen encountered something paranormal. That he slipped into another dimension. That he was part of a government experiment. These theories are fueled by the sheer improbability of his case and the eerie silence that surrounds it. But Stephen Kubacki's story isn't just a mystery. It's a reminder of how fragile our understanding of reality can be. How a person can vanish without a trace and reappear with no memory. How the human mind can protect itself in ways we don't fully comprehend. Imagine waking up in a field, not knowing who you are, where you've been, or how you got there. Imagine piecing together your life from fragments, trying to reconnect with a world that moved on without you. That was Stephen's reality, and he chose to move forward. Today, Stephen lives quietly. He's a father, a scholar, a man who once vanished into the cold and returned with a story he may never fully understand. His case remains one of the most baffling disappearances in modern history. Not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. There were no ransom notes, no sightings, no confessions. Just a young man who went skiing and disappeared, only to reappear over a year later with no memory and no answers. And maybe that's the most haunting part. Because in a world driven by logic and evidence, Stephen Kubacki's story defies both. It asks questions we can't answer. It challenges the boundaries of psychology, geography, and time. And it reminds us that sometimes the truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's beyond it. It was a warm afternoon in late June 1981, the kind of day where the forest feels calm, familiar. Maurice Dametz, 75 years old, sat quietly in a small clearing in Pike National Forest, near Sedalia, Colorado. He wasn't there to hike or explore. He was there for something simple: digging for topaz. It was a hobby he'd enjoyed for years. Despite his age and health problems, polio and arthritis, Maurice knew this spot well. He couldn't walk far. He couldn't climb, but he could sit and dig. That day, his friend David Mashiri had driven him into the forest, helped him down a short slope, and made sure he was comfortable. Maurice was only about 150 feet from the car, close enough to hear someone call, far enough to feel alone. David walked uphill to dig in another spot. He checked on Maurice now and then. Everything seemed normal, quiet, peaceful, but when David came back around 3 p.m., Maurice was gone. David froze. The spot where Maurice had been sitting was empty. No tools, no backpack, no sign of movement. Just nothing. He called out Maurice's name. No answer. He scanned the slope, the trees, the car. Still nothing. Maurice couldn't have walked away. He couldn't have climbed the slope. He couldn't have run. David knew that. He had helped Maurice down that slope himself. It had taken effort, time, and now Maurice was gone. David ran to the car, then to the nearest phone. He called for help. Authorities arrived quickly. Search teams spread out. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers combed the area. But there was no trace, no footprints, no scent trail, no torn clothing, no drag marks, no blood, just silence. Maurice had vanished. In daylight, with someone nearby. The terrain was solid. No sinkholes, no cliffs, no caves. Maurice had been stationary. He couldn't have wandered off, and yet he was gone. The official report listed him as a missing person. But the circumstances didn't make sense. Investigators were puzzled. Family members were devastated. The story began to spread. Some believed Maurice had been abducted by someone, or something. Others thought he may have fallen into a hidden crevice, but the ground showed no signs. No disturbance, no collapse. Then came the stranger theories. That Maurice had been taken by something not human, that he had slipped into another dimension. that he had been pulled into a portal, a time anomaly, a rip in reality. There was no evidence, no witnesses, no answers, just a man. Who was there? And then wasn't. Maurice wasn't reckless. He wasn't lost. He wasn't alone. He was in a familiar spot, doing something he loved. He had limited mobility. He couldn't have gone far. And yet, he disappeared. The search continued for days, then weeks. But nothing surfaced. No clues, no sightings, no remains. The forest held its silence. The case was quietly closed. Maurice was declared missing, presumed dead. But those who knew him, those who were there, couldn't accept it. David McSherry, the man who had been with him, was never the same. He had turned his back for minutes, and when he turned around, Maurice was gone. No sound, no warning, just absence. It haunted him. It haunted everyone who heard the story, because it wasn't just a disappearance. It was a vanishing. Years passed. The forest grew thicker. The story faded from headlines, but it never faded from the minds of those who studied strange disappearances. Maurice's case became part of a larger pattern, one that defied logic. People vanishing in national parks, in daylight, without a trace, without explanation. Researchers began to connect dots, similar cases, similar conditions, remote areas, sudden disappearances, no evidence, no resolution. Maurice's story stood out because of his age, his condition, and the sheer impossibility of movement. He couldn't have gone anywhere, and yet he was gone. It raised questions that science couldn't answer. How can someone disappear when every condition says they shouldn't? What forces, natural or otherwise, could cause such a thing? Some believe the answer lies in the land itself, that certain places hold energy, anomalies, portals, that the earth has thin spots, places where reality is fragile. Others believe in more grounded explanations, that Maurice may have been taken by someone hiding in the woods, that he was abducted. But again, no signs, no struggle, no noise, and Maurice couldn't have resisted. He was too weak, too slow. The idea of a silent, clean abduction in broad daylight, with no trace, strains belief. And yet, it's the only explanation some can accept, because the alternatives are even harder to grasp. That something beyond our understanding intervened, that Maurice stepped into something not meant for us. Today, Maurice Dametz remains missing. His name lives on in lists of unexplained vanishings. His story is told in whispers, in forums, in documentaries, but no one has answers. No one knows what happened in that forest, and maybe no one ever will. His disappearance is a reminder that even in a world of satellites, cell phones, and surveillance, people can still vanish, without a trace, without a sound, without reason. It challenges our understanding of space, time, and possibility. It forces us to confront the unknown, and it leaves us with a haunting truth, that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are the ones that happen in silence. You don't always notice the exact moment someone disappears. It's quiet, subtle, but once you do, it's all you can think about. Bobby Bizup was 10 years old, a quiet, kind kid with a hearing impairment, spending his summer at a Catholic boys' camp near Estes Park, Colorado. He'd been there before. He knew the trails. He felt safe. On August 15th, 1958, Bobby joined a group of boys and a counselor for a short hike. It wasn't far, just up a nearby trail. Bobby kept pace at first, but somewhere along the way, he fell behind. The counselor noticed and told Bobby to head back to camp. It was a short walk, downhill, familiar. Bobby nodded, turned around, and walked off alone. That was the last time anyone saw him. When Bobby didn't return, the camp staff began searching. They called his name, checked the trail, asked the other boys. Nothing. Within hours, authorities were notified. Search teams arrived. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew overhead. The terrain was rugged, but not impossible. Bobby had walked it before. He knew the way. And yet, he was gone. No footprints. No torn clothing. No signs of a fall. Just silence. The search continued for days, then weeks. Volunteers combed the forest, climbed the slopes, searched the creeks, but Bobby had vanished. His parents were devastated. The camp was shaken, and the investigators were confused. How could a boy disappear on a trail he knew? In daylight? With people nearby? The terrain around Camp St. Malo was a mix of dense forest, rocky outcrops, and steep inclines. The camp itself sat at the base of Mount Meeker, a towering peak in the Rocky Mountains. The trails were well worn, used by campers for years. But beyond the marked paths, the wilderness grew wild and unpredictable. Search teams expanded their radius. They checked ravines, caves, and even old mining shafts. Still nothing. No scent trail for the dogs. No signs of animal activity. No broken branches or disturbed soil. It was as if Bobby had stepped off the trail and into thin air. A year passed. Then, in July 1959, a hiker stumbled upon something strange. Bobby's hearing aid, lying on the ground near a steep slope. Not far from it, they found pieces of his clothing, torn, weathered, scattered, and then his remains. The location was remote, high up, rough terrain. Not a place a 10-year-old could easily reach, especially not alone. Especially not Bobby. The area had been searched before, thoroughly, but now, there he was, or what was left of him. The discovery raised more questions than answers. How did he get there? Why hadn't the search teams found him earlier? And why were his clothes inside out? There were no signs of animal attack, no clear cause of death. The official explanation was vague. Possibly a fall, possibly exposure, but nothing added up. The slope was steep. The rocks were sharp. Bobby couldn't have climbed that high. Not with his condition, not without help. And yet, that's where he was found. Some believed he had been abducted. Others thought he had wandered off and gotten lost. But the evidence didn't support either theory. There were no drag marks, no signs of struggle, no blood, just scattered remains and silence. The camp staff were interviewed again. The counselor who had told Bobby to return alone was questioned. He insisted Bobby had understood the instructions, that he had watched him turn and walk away. But something about the timing didn't sit right. How long had it been before they noticed he was missing? Could someone have intercepted him on the trail? Was there a blind spot, a stretch of path hidden from view? Investigators mapped the area. They retraced the route, but no answers came. Bobby's parents struggled with the loss. They had trusted the camp, trusted the staff, and now their son was gone. The Catholic Archdiocese, which ran the camp, offered condolences. But the family wanted more. They wanted clarity, closure, something to explain the impossible. But the case remained open and cold. Years passed. The camp continued to operate. New generations of boys came and went. But Bobby's story lingered. It became part of the camp's quiet history. A cautionary tale. A mystery whispered around campfires. Researchers who studied unexplained disappearances began to take interest. Bobby's case fit a pattern: young children vanishing in national parks, in daylight, without a trace, without explanation. One researcher noted the strange condition of Bobby's clothing. His shirt was inside out. His pants were reversed. One shoe was missing, the other pristine. No scuff marks, no dirt, as if it had never been worn. The hearing aid, too, was intact. Not broken, just lying there. These details didn't match a fall or an animal attack. They suggested something else, something deliberate. But what? Some speculated about human involvement, that someone had been hiding in the woods, watching, waiting, that Bobby had been taken. But again, no signs, no struggle, no noise. And Bobby was partially deaf. He wouldn't have heard someone approach. He wouldn't have known to run. The idea of a silent, clean abduction in broad daylight with no trace strains belief. And yet, it's the only explanation some can accept, because the alternatives are even harder to grasp. Others turn to stranger theories, that Bobby had stepped into a portal, a time slip, a dimensional rift, that the forest held secrets we don't understand, places where reality bends, where people vanish, and sometimes come back. But Bobby didn't come back. He was found, but not whole, not intact, just fragments, scattered across a slope he shouldn't have reached. The location where Bobby was found was later marked on maps used by researchers. It became part of a cluster areas where other children had vanished. The terrain was similar. The conditions matched. Remote, quiet, isolated, and always no witnesses. No answers. Just silence. Today, Bobby Bizup is remembered not just as a missing child, but as a symbol of something bigger, something unsettling. His name appears in books, forums, and documentaries about unexplained disappearances. And while the official story may be closed, the questions remain open. What happened on that trail? What did Bobby see? What did he hear? And why, after all this time, does it still feel like something's missing? The forest around Camp St. Malo still stands. The trails are still used. The cabins still echo with laughter. But somewhere in those woods, a question lingers, a moment frozen in time. A boy walking alone and then gone. And for those who remember Bobby, that moment never fades. From here on, we're diving into real disappearance cases. Real names, real places, real mysteries. If there's a case you want me to cover next, tell me in the comments. And if these true vanishings intrigue you, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.